The University College of the University of Maine system, together with the Maine Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Standards, has formed a partnership to make public information more accessible to Maine's employers.
As you can see, we have already crossed out that case which was deemed not OSHA recordable. Please note this last case on this form, Clint Dempsey. He was injured December 30th, but it wound up that this employee did not return to work till the 4th of January. What do you do about year-to-year cases? In this situation, you do not stop the count on December 31st. The days lost in the following calendar year count on the year the injury or illness occurred. So he actually lost 1 day in calendar year 2010 and 3 days in calendar year 2011 for a grand total of 4 days away from work, which is listed in column K. To reiterate what I said on the previous slide, if you do have a case that continues from 1 year to the next, do not stop the count on December 31st. You continue counting or estimating those calendar days away or days of job transfer or restriction into the new year. And estimation means that you continue estimating, call the physician, call the provider, get an estimated date of return, and put that on your OSHA Form 300. It may change depending on how quickly that employee heals. Again, you record those days on the log the injury or illness occurred. Do not record the same case again on the New Year's log. You are recording the same case twice. Can you imagine what that does to your incidence rate? And please don't forget the 180-day rule. Again, the maximum number of days away plus days restricted, maxed out at 180 calendar days.
I have a question. What if I don't know when the employee is set to return to full duty?
In a situation like that, you are required to estimate future days away and or days of job transfer. From a practical point of view, the best thing to do is contact the physician or provider and get an estimated return to work date. And if that employee is going to be put on some sort of restricted duty, estimate how long that person will be put on restricted work duty. As always, don't forget the 180-day rule. The sum of the days away plus days restricted is 180. Okay. Now we go to the next slide, which deals where we have already gone through all of our OSHA recordable cases. At the bottom of your OSHA Form 300, what is circled there, are the totals for each of the columns. You are now done with filling out your OSHA Form 300. We have now finished filling out our OSHA Form 300. Now we must take the data from the OSHA Form 300 and put it on the summary form, which is the OSHA Form 300A. To do that, please be sure to copy all of your totals from columns G through M6 to the corresponding lines on the left-hand side of the 300A. If a column total is 0, be sure to enter 0. Do not leave blank or dash. I have heard stories about OSHA inspectors fining and or citing employers for failing to put a 0 on that. And it looks good when you have a 0 in that column anyways. It means you're doing a good job. Also, avoid mismatches. Please be sure that the number of cases equals the number of injury and illness types, which I will illustrate on the next slide. Please get out your OSHA Form 300A, the summary of work-related injuries and illnesses. As you can see, on the left-hand side, the number of cases for this welding company equals 7. Column H is 6, column I is 1, to total 7 cases. And for each case, there is one and only one injury and illness types. And as you can see, there were 4 injuries, 1 skin disorder, 1 hearing loss, and 1 other, for a total 7. The 7 equals 7. Circled on the upper right-hand side of the 300A is the establishment information. This is where you indicate the specific address of the site applicable to this 300A. This is not the company headquarters. This is not a company address. This is the address of the specific location of where this applies to. On this section, you will see under industry description, that must be filled out, some sort of description of what the primary industry that goes on at that location. The SIC and NAICS codes are optional. You do not need to fill them out unless you happen to know what the Standard Industrial Classification or NAICS code is for that location. On the middle of your 300A, on the right-hand side, you indicate there your average employment and your total hours worked for just that establishment. Not company-wide, not district-wide, just that particular work site. The next few slides I will be discussing how to properly calculate average employment and total hours worked. We find over the years that many employers' high incidence rates is due primarily to miscalculations, especially on hours worked. First off, I wish to discuss what is average employment. And OSHA defines average employment as the average number of employees per pay period for the entire calendar year, January 1st through December 31st. In your count of average employment, be sure to include everybody: full-time, part-time, hourly, salaried, seasonal, and if you use any temporary help agency people, please be sure to include those in your calculation of your average employment. For your public sector, you include volunteers, elected, appointed, workfare, and Aspire officials. And we have a special optional worksheet that is included in your packet that details how to calculate average employment. Assuming that you have the same number of employees throughout the summer, count each employee as a quarter of a year-round person. For example, if you have 20 employees working a quarter of a year, that's 20 quarter people, or 20 times a fourth, or 5 year-round employees. Average employment, we're looking at the average number of people actually working in that time period. Don't count per diem employees in your calculations unless they were actually working within that time period. The next slide I will be going over is how to properly calculate the total hours worked. Total hours worked under the OSHA rules is the total hours worked by all of your employees. As I mentioned in the previous slide, for your total hours worked, you include everybody: full-time, part-time, hourly, salaried, seasonal, and don't forget your temporary employees. Public sector, you include your hours worked by volunteers, elected, appointed, workfare, and Aspire officials. And I do have extra handouts that are available if you're a public sector employer and you need to figure out hours worked for someone like a volunteer fire department or a school or town administration, for example. When you're calculating your totals hours worked, you want to be sure you include all your overtime. This is especially true for your salaried employees. Many salaried people put in on average 50 or 55 hours a week. You want to be sure to include their hours. Do not include sick, personal, vacation, or holiday time. And remember, we're talking about hours worked, not hours paid. Assuming that you are supervising the temps on a day-to-day basis, contact the temp agency. We will accept an estimate of the exact hours worked if they can't give you a precise number. For example, if you know that somebody worked about 4 hours a day and they worked all week, we will accept about 20 hours for that week.
What about salaried employees? We don't keep an exact count of their hours worked.
As with temps, it is permissible to estimate hours worked. For example, if you know that a supervisor puts in a 50-hour week year-round, that would be 50 hours times 50 work weeks per year, or roughly about 2,500 work hours. That is perfectly acceptable.
I represent a small municipality. We have a lot of committees. We have a board of selectmen. We have a planning board and others. How do I calculate the average employment or hours worked?
I have put together several cheat sheets to deal with your specific situation. One has to do with volunteer fire departments, one has to do with town administration, school administration, and public schools. These cheat sheets are available at the website, and also I would be glad to mail you or fax you those forms if interested.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Besides, now that you're done calculating your average employment and your total hours worked, the reason why we have both is to use the average employment to check your hours worked. So what you do is the following. Please divide the total hours worked by your average employment and take that result and divide that by 50 work weeks per calendar year. This is the average work hours per work week per employee. If the result is roughly about 25 or less, or 50 or more, double check your data. You may legitimately have a lot of part-time employees, or you may have a lot of overtime. Over the years, we have seen some extreme examples on calculating average employment and total hours worked. I have seen businesses where there are 200 employees and the total hours worked is 3,000, which winds up being 15 hours per employee per year, not per week. I have also seen surveys come across my desk where the average employment is 10 and the total hours worked is 1 million. I believe that that situation was the total revenues that that company earned that particular year. We are not interested in money at all on these in the OSHA forms. We are interested in hours worked.